Hello and welcome to another episode of the Board Game BBQ Podcast. This is episode 254. Thanks for tuning in. Proudly brought to you by Advent Games and our Patreons. They're the guys and girls that make this show happen each and every week. My name's Dan. I'll be your host for tonight, and I'm joined by two other members of the team. They are my brothers from other mothers. They are mates from the same state. It's Conor and Mike. How you doing, fellas?
Good, mate. What's going on?
Not much. Looking forward to jumping in, talking about some games tonight. Con Dog, how you doing?
Yes, I'm good, gentlemen. On a Sunday night, Mike was just rubbing it in that he's got a shorter week coming up because of a bit of board game action happening next weekend, which I'm sure he'll froth on about for a little bit. But yeah, looking forward to getting in and talking a few games with you lads.
Well, it hasn't been that long since you and I were on the podcast, and I know for a fact that Mike has had a very full dance card with gaming over the last few weeks. I'm very eager to jump straight in here about some of the gaming goodness that Mike's been getting to the table. Mike, what's some of the stuff that you need to tell us about? What do we need to know?
It has been a busy August so far. We're recording on the 6th, and I've recorded 19 plays of 13 games so far. So it's been a good month so far, good week.
That means you replay games. You don't just play them once and put them aside.
I have replayed a couple games.
Usually
I don't do that.
You're doing it wrong. You play the game, you put it away, and you let it gather dust until you sell it. Isn't that what you're supposed to do?
If it helps, my sizzle today will be the one game that I've played multiple times. Every other game has been played once each.
I'm feeling much better and feeling less the need to put you down.
You need to taste all the flavors.
Yeah, but what if they're just all vanilla?
No, Skittles, taste the rainbow, you know? Like, you taste a bit of everything.
Purple's the best Skittle flavor, by the way.
The first game I will talk about is my most recent played game. It's a new little game that came in from Kickstarter. It's in the family of Calico and Verdant and all those games from Flat Out and AEG. It's Fit to Print. Fit to Print is really, really cool. It's actually a game, believe it or not, folks, sit in your chairs. Renata, my partner, backed it and I didn't, which is insane. She just liked the theme of it and thought it looked really cute. And I sort of just didn't even look at it at all. I'm like, I'm just going to sit back and do nothing and wait for it to rock up and see what happens. It's an absolute cute game that gives you big time. Oh my goodness, it just left my head. What's the big game? You're building a spaceship and then you blow it up, basically.
Race for the Galaxy?
Right, not Race for the Galaxy. Oh my goodness me, I've just gone nuts.
Galaxy Trucker.
Galaxy Trucker, that's the one. Galaxy Trucker. It's basically a cute version of Galaxy Trucker in the theme of cute anthropomorphic animals in like a making a newspaper in a paper company. So basically it has the same vibe. We have a bunch of upside down tiles and you're sort of against a timer to bring them over. So you're picking up a tile that's face down, bring it over your little 3D desk that you've set up next to you. So it's a little desk with pictures of things sprawled all over it, newspaper clippings and things like that. And you flip the tile over and see if it's a tile you want to keep. If you want to keep it, you drop it down on your desk because you're getting your desk all ready to make a paper. Then go over and get new pieces. Or if you don't want to keep the piece, you sort of prop it face up in the pile for other people to collect. And what it is, in this, 3 to 5 minute timer that you're running, you want to collect enough pieces to fill in your board in front of you. And you're playing over 3 different days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And the newspaper section becomes bigger and bigger each day. And you want to pick up enough pieces that you think are going to fit into that section to fill it up. And at the same time, you're picking up newspaper articles, pictures, and ads. And you can't have 2 newspaper articles of the same color touching. You can't have 2 photos touching each other, and you can't have any ads touching each other. So you're picking up all these pieces, putting them down, and then once you pick up enough, you yell out layout, and that means you're moving on to phase 2, and you're laying them all out on your actual newspaper in front of you, and you're trying to put things in the right spot and, different things. I'm not going to go into all the rules, but...
So up until that point, you're just completely doing a spatial puzzle in your head.
In your head. You're not allowed to put it over your newspaper.
Yeah, I think I've got enough pieces and they're all going to fit.
Absolutely.
And then you call layout, and then you just hope to God that it all just works.
But at the same time, certain things work together. So there's happy news articles and sad news articles, and you want to have a balanced layout. Otherwise, the difference is negative points. So if I have on my whole article, on my whole newspaper, 5 happy faces and 2 sad faces, it's imbalanced. So the difference is 3. So I'll actually get 3 negative points at the end of the game. Certain photos work with certain articles. Everything's different sizes, everything's different shapes. They're just trying to work it all out. And then basically you fit it all in the best you can. And if the timer runs out or you fill out your whole newspaper and you're finished, you grab like a little counter that says I'm first, second, or third. And that sort of lets you start the next phase in a little drafting phase that I won't go into too deeply. But you're basically trying to jumble up this newspaper really, really quickly. And it's so fun. And each round, you're setting a timer of 3, 4, or 5 minutes, depending how brutal you want it to be. And 5 minutes was still really difficult. And yeah, you have like you start with a starter tile that gives you like a unique power you might want to work towards. The replayability is huge on this because it's always going to be a little bit different. And it was really cute. You're just sort of, scrambling to find all the pieces you need and making that spatial puzzle in your head before you do it. And anything that's left over, if you took too many pieces, they're negative points as well. So you don't want to overtake.
Cool. So now I know your experience with real-time games, and I'm thinking of Taco Cat Goat Cheese Pizza.
Yeah.
How susceptible is this game to injuries if everyone's grabbing tiles at the same time?
No, it was nothing like that. I think you have this big sprawl of tiles there, and everyone's just sort of taking them one at a time. There have been no injuries yet. Sorry?
It doesn't get completely manic.
No, because the rule is you have to pick up the tile and bring it over your desk before you flip it over. So it's kind of like, it's not too crazy. It was all, all controlled, but we were playing 3 players, and I believe this goes to 6 players. So 3 more hands diving in to dig up pieces could get a bit more rough. But it played really well. The art was really cute. And when you give yourself a minute to start reading the little articles, it was adorable. I was wondering
how much detail they'd gone into it.
Yeah. Little headlines that are really cute. What was the one thing I was reading? Something about an armadillo playing a stereophone or something. I can't remember. Something crazy. But the pictures are really sweet. Everything's really, really cute. It's got this nice newspaper aesthetic to it. It was a really sweet game. So there's lots of ways to score, but it was lots of fun.
Yeah, it looks like a really sort of wholesome type of game. Kind of like visually gives off the vibe of like you said, it's the anthropomorphic animals. So, Creature Comforts, Everdell, those types of games. I can see there's like the breaking news sections. Is that like the mini missions that you have to do each round? Is that what you've got to do? Is that what you're aiming for? I remember
now. No, there's breaking news. So there's these cards you can introduce as a module that create like an event every round. So you can have like, you can't place anything over the crease of the newspaper, or you can't do this, or you're going to get more points for this. We didn't even use those because we're like, there's enough going on at the moment. Let's just play our first game a bit simpler. And there's also unique player powers as well. So you can take like a little name badge, and on the back of the name badge, it's a cheat sheet. On the front of the name badge, it shows you what your unique player power is. So all those were in there, and then there was like a mini expansion in there as well. There was just more tiles to use, really, that gave some different rules. But overall, it was a really, really fun game, and quick, because even if you're playing 5 minutes, after you teach it, every round's 5 minutes, it's 15 minutes with scoring in between. Sure. You know what I mean? So it's really quick, really snappy, and playing up to 6 people, that's going to really hit a good demographic of players. It's fun. And I think the scoring, even though scoring's a bit fiddly, I think that's a part of the game, because if it wasn't too fiddly, your decision-making and picking up tiles would be too quick and easy.
For sure.
So how fiddly the sort of scoring is a little bit, not very, but it's supposed to be a bit confusing when you pick up tiles. Well, this has 2 blue faces. They're sad. I already have 3 smiley faces. I need 1 more blue face, but I have a pink article. I need a pink photo, and you're trying to do all this math in your head with that timer going off behind you, So there's a lot of pressure there.
Yeah. No, it seems
great.
Yeah, I was just about to say, it looks really cool. Sounds fun.
I'd love to hear you report back after you play it with 6.
Yeah, I definitely will. I'll be taking it to my game.
How frenzied it gets.
Or even like report back of your best articles and your best combinations of articles and see if you can actually make something like an acorn shortage that leads to, worker surplus in the trees or something like that. Like that would be funny.
I like it.
That's cool. Look, I know you got a lot more to talk about, Mike. Let's hear one more before we go to Conor.
Let's talk about a small one. So it's a really cute game a friend brought around called Loony Quest. And don't worry, guys, it's not Looney Tunes. Dan, this is one you need to get for the boys.
For sure.
Yeah, it's really cute. So it's like a video game where you're playing over like 6 levels every game. And it's a board in the middle of the table that shows some sort of maze. There's all different ways of sort of playing. But there's a little board on the table. And let's just say it's got a sun in each corner, meaning start from and finish at. And then a bunch of obstacles. There might be a bunch of, think of like little Mario tokens that you're going to punch, like little gold coins. There's going to be bad guys in there and all sorts of things. And the mission at the bottom will tell you what you have to do. So in front of you, you've got just a clear piece of plastic, big and square, that fits perfectly over that central board. And what you're going to have to do is, without putting that clear piece over the board, just in front of you, you're going to set a timer once again, and you're going to potentially, let's say, draw that path in front of you without putting it over the picture. So the idea is you're going to draw this path where you might be trying to collect coins, finish and start at certain points, go through a maze. You might even want to try to pick up a bonus box that gives you special abilities. And then after everyone finishes doing it in that time, one at a time, you're going to put your clear square over the picture and see how well you did. Yeah. If you hit walls, you lose a point. If you hit a bad guy, you lose 2 points. If you finish and start in the correct places, you gain 3 points. Things like that. Really fun, really simple. But then you go to the next level, and it might be you have to shoot boxes falling down in parachutes. So you're putting a dot in each one. Or the next game, you might have to circle certain things. So you're drawing circles in front of you. It wasn't
all just tracing lines. I didn't realize it was
not all about line. There. And then, of course, there's a boss fight at the end. Wow. So last night we were playing this boss fight against 3 penguins. You had to draw lines from the base of the penguins to big icicles on the roof to make the icicles drop onto them. Things like that, you know. But if you hit a single piece of wall, you lose the game instantly. So are you going to try to get all 3 icicles to get 2 points each? You're just going to do 1 to play it safe. A lot of choices in there that you're trying to make really quick. But the bad things that happen are kind of fun. So if you pick up bonuses, it might be a banana peel, and you throw that onto your opponent's sheet before you start, and they can't draw on it. They have to draw around it.
Really?
Or there's one that I hate. There's one, it's a mosquito, and you have to balance this mosquito cardboard token on top of your texture and then draw without it falling off. And if it falls off, you have to put it back on before you continue. But I will warn, the one downside of this board game, the textures that come with it, the markers, did not even last the first play.
Yeah.
They died straight away. They were horrible. If you're going to play this game, get your own whiteboard markers, because the ones in the box were literally thrown in the bin in the middle of the first game you played. But otherwise, really fun, cute idea that I'm surprised I haven't seen before. Quick, snappy, you play through 6 levels, then you go to the next level, and there's a bunch of different levels you can play as well.
Yeah. I got this for my niece's Christmas or one of their birthdays, and we played it, and it was an absolute hoot. Like, it's perfect for just about everyone. Because,
exactly.
Little kids can look at it, and little kids kind of have that. They just have a really good link between their hand-eye coordination or spatial stuff, and they just smash it. So they were absolutely belting us on the first ones, and then it was where you had to circle the crates that were falling or something like that. I can't remember, it was a while since I played it, but when I saw on the run sheet that you're going to talk about this, I had a big smile on my face because it's so much fun. Mike's right, Dan. The boys would love this so much.
It really sounds like, because they still come into the office and take dungeon scrawlers, which is something that I talked about a few episodes back. They still get that out and play that, and that's just them drawing around the mazes and collecting stuff in the dungeons and stuff. So having it that sort of spatial stuff where you can't actually see until you lay the acetate over the top of the main board. That sounds like a lot of fun.
And you go like we sort of started doing not like a drum roll, but like a when like because you wouldn't know, and it was always like there'd be one stalactite you would hit, or you would just miss like a coin or something like that. But it's actually quite interesting, the variety of little tasks they get you to do, and
you know how many levels there are.
Oh my.
I'm not sure. I want to say there's maybe 4 to 6 in there, but each level is like 5 or 6 levels in there.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And they all end with a boss fight that's got a different thing that you need to do. Right. So, and you get, and the points are based on, how many of the, like if it's a tracing one, it's like how many coins you've hit. If it's like a circling one, it's how many ones you've circled. And sometimes, you can get bonuses too. Is there one where you've got to do it upside down, Mike, or something? Or
no, the board changes rotation every single time, every turn as well. So no one's ever looking at it front on, which really isn't a big advantage anyway, because you're still drawing it the same. I don't think having the board face you is a big advantage, but the board rotates every time.
I tended to turn my acetate like the direction that the board was facing, so at least then I was constant, as opposed to trying to sort of work it out 90 degrees or 180 degrees in my head, which is muddy to begin with, let's face it. So that's probably not great. But it is really fun. I think it's still pretty readily available. No, it's not.
My friend wanted to buy it straight away and couldn't find a copy. When my first mate bought it, there was like 2 copies left.
Yep.
And since then, any copies that are available are ridiculously pumped up for what it is. Okay. I wouldn't pay heaps for this game. I saw one copy for like $200 on Amazon or something. I'm like, that's not happening. So I'm sure it'll probably come back into rotation. It's probably just been a bit out of print. I didn't look super hard, but having a quick look to see if there's any copies available, I couldn't see one. But Loony Quest, it was a lot of fun. Good, silly fun, enjoyed it.
2015. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Let's keep an eye out for it, but I got a feeling that everyone, after listening to this, they're going to be keeping their eye out for it as well. So if the retail stores are smart, they'll jack up the price and take advantage of us. We'll come back to you, Mike. I know you got a few more that you want to talk about, and I definitely want to hear about it, but we'll go over to Conor. Conor, what's something that's been hitting your table this week?
Something that's been hitting my digital table, because I've been playing a lot more digital games and IRL games, is I was lucky enough to have Sarah teach me Tash Kalar last week, or the week before last. So which is Sarah's first sort of game. That
her first Sizzle.
It was. And I'm really surprised it took me so long to play. Well, I'm not, but it's very much my type of game. So it's sort of stripping it down, and obviously Sarah could explain it way better than me, is that it is a battler, right? But it's not your typical battler of I move my character here, I roll my dice, I play my card. The characters that you can summon are based on these tokens that you place on the board. So you start off with like basic units. They've got particular names. Even Sarah kept mucking up the names, like calling them elites or heroes or something like that, but it doesn't really matter. But you kind of got like 3 levels of heroes, of soldiers. So there's the basic ones, which are the weakest. Then depending on the orientation of your first level soldiers on the board, you can then in your turn play a card of another character, and the characters are based on like a particular theme. So in our first game we played kind of like the basic, sort of archetypical, soldiers, wizards, all that type of stuff. But in the second game, I played as some barbarians. So they had things like wild wolves and bears, and what else do they have? The Angel of Death, makes perfect sense, right? But depending on the arrangement of your tokens will depend on which effectively characters or heroes that you can summon. And that becomes really, really intriguing for me, because it goes from being almost like this token placing game to a battler. Like it's merged together in this really, really unique way, because you also then you win the game based on scoring these different missions. And so you're trying to place your tokens down, trying to then score based on the missions, but then you also don't want to, just place tokens down on areas that aren't going to lead to you being able to summon your more powerful units, because once those units are summoned, they tend to have a special ability. So it might be like you can move another token. You might be able to give directions, or they might take a battle ability. There's kind of like this hierarchy of movement where if you're higher than the token, you can move on to that spot and effectively defeat it. But if you're equal to the other token, you've got to take a combat action. You can leap and then take a combat leap, which means you can leap to any other spot. It's really, really like for such a smallish game. It gave me so much brain burn, because like I said, you're trying to position your tokens so that you have so that you can defeat like your opponent, but just by wiping your opponent out won't get you the win. In fact, it's pretty much impossible. So the two methods of winning is getting to, and please correct me if I'm wrong, either 8 points or 10 points, or if you cycle through all your cards by summoning them, then you have also won. So I think both times Sarah beat me. The first time she taught me, and then the second time where the kid gloves were off, she beat me both times. But she was able to cycle through all of her cards and thus play all of her characters, and it meant that she won. So yeah, in an age of like where I've played things like Super Fantasy Brawl, Unmatched, what else? It's like even things like Mythic Mischief, where they're not all of them arena battlers, but they're a one-on-one match where you're trying to outposition the opponent. It's really cool to have this thing of all of a sudden, like, you think you're in a position, not a position of power, and then all of a sudden you can play a powerful character just because of where your tokens are positioned. And like I said, each of them have different themes. Each of them have different like aspects of the game they focus on. So like the barbarians were about movement and then buffing and then moving, whereas there's like an expansion. We didn't play as them, but yeah, it's just I think someone had mentioned Tash Kalar the other day, and I was like, oh yeah, I played that with Sarah. So it was just really, it was firstly nice to play a game with Sarah, and then also good to check that one off, sort of like my gaming bucket list, because it had been something that I'd been wanting to play for a long time.
That's cool, man. I wanted to ask, is there a way to try to slow Sarah down from cycling through all her characters? Do you have much control to try to impact that?
Yeah, so what you can do, because you can only summon the characters with particular tokens in particular places on the board, you can start to get rid of those tokens. So effectively what was happening is I wasn't removing enough of her tokens. I was focusing on doing my own thing. Yeah. But because she was just able to accelerate a bit quicker and move things forward, at a greater pace for herself. So yeah, like, because once you have summoned that character, I think those tokens still stay in that spot. So it's not like you summon it and the tokens go away, but you can then start to get rid of them. Some of the tokens, some of the characters have double ups. So there might be like 2 knights or 2 sorcerers or something like that. Yeah. So you start to remember like, oh, that's the position. I'd imagine like the more you play it, that's the position for that one. So I'll make sure that they can't place that token down there, because I'll get rid of it, and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's really cool. So if you're into battlers, and I'm sure people who have sort of had more time around board games than I have would be well over this. But yeah, it's really, really cool. Just a different way to look at an arena battler, a one-on-one battler that are pretty popular these days. So yeah, that was Tash Kalar. I believe it's by Czech Games Edition.
It is, yeah. Vlada Shavatel.
Yeah, Vlada Shavatel.
Been around a while too, 2013.
Yeah. Really,
I actually have a copy of this game, and it's going to make you sick. I picked it up at an op shop for $8.
That's pretty good.
But I haven't played it. I just knew of it and went, oh, I'm grabbing that. And it's on my shelf of shame. I don't think it's one I can introduce the boys to. It's probably not the kind of thing that Jen's going to want to play either.
if they don't want to play like a battler or whatever, and it's probably, it's not like you can just grab the pieces and put them on the board. Like the whole intricacy behind the positioning of the tokens and when and where you play things is kind of like the backbone of the game.
Now, did you say you played that digitally?
Yeah, it's on BGA.
Is it really?
Yep. So it's on BGA. They've got all the expansions, really intuitive, like BGA quite often is. And because like you're really just playing tokens, it's not like you're missing out on a lot of like board presence. Even when you summon your powerful units, they're still just tokens, like universal tokens. That's like, oh, well, this represents, the tree ent or something like that. But yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
Well, speaking of BGA, I've been playing a bunch of stuff on BGA as well. Just quickly, Hadrian's Wall. I just hit 750 games on BGA, which allows me to get into some alpha games. Games are in alpha state at the moment. So I've been playing a bunch of Hadrian's Wall with Jonathan from our Discord. I've been playing a bunch of Decrypto, which is currently on alpha on Board Game Arena with some of the guys in our Discord community as well. After Us, which is one game that Jules sizzled a couple of weeks back. There's an implementation of that on BGA that's really, really good. But one game I wanted to mention tonight is a trick-taking game called Yokai Septet, which we've been having a lot of fun with. And this is a trick-taking game where you're actually, it plays for 4 players and you're paired up with another person. And so I'm currently in the throes of, I think, 2 different games, and I've been paired up with Jonathan both times, and we're playing against Draven and I think Miffy as well from our Discord. And the way it works is just your basic trick-taker game. There are 7 different suits. So and the cards are there's seven cards of each suit, but it changes depending on the color. So the green cards, they're from ace to 7. Then the next color are from 2 to 8. Then the next ones are from 3 to 9. The next ones are from 4 to 10. You get the gist. All 7 suits. But the 7 is the yokai boss. So the 7 is the card that you want to try and win. So you start the game by swapping 3 cards with the other person in your team, and then it's just basic trick taking rules. There is also a random trump as well that you got to contend with, and not only that, but there's also if anyone has the ace, the green ace, which is the only ace in the game, that actually beats everything. So you check if the ace has been played first before you check if a trump has been played, and then it's the highest led suit wins. And you're trying to win as many 7s as you can. Or I think it's the first to win just 7 tricks in a row. But if your team wins 4 of the yokais, 4 of the 7s before you actually get to someone winning, then you'll win the round. And then you add up the scores. So it's really it's another wrinkle in the old trick taker where you're trying to remember where the 7s are. So if I have like a 13 and a 7, maybe I'll give the 7 to Jonathan, so then I'll play the 13, knowing that he'll follow suit with his 7, and then as a team, we'll actually win the 7 for that round. But then hope that the other 2 guys aren't short-suited and they play the trump instead, because then they win the trick. And yeah, it's really, really clever. It's not as easy playing trick-taking games online, I will admit. The interface, we've played it a few times now, and the interface has actually been updated since we first started playing it, and the interface makes it easier to keep track of what's being played and where everything is sitting in terms of the table. But I think anytime you're playing a team game, it's the preference is always going to be playing in person,
sure.
Particularly with trick-taking games. And the other thing when you're playing trick-taking turn-based, it's harder to remember. Like if one of those sort of, I was going to say Svengali, but if you're just good at memorizing cards, basically, in a trick-taker, you can, not Svengali level, but it's good. You can keep track of what's being played. Certainly, much better if you're playing in real time. Now there is the menu and the history on the side, so you can scroll down if you want and see what cards have been played and what haven't been played. But everyone seems to be on this little sort of bender of trick takers at the moment. I know that Mitch and some of the guys played Inside Job over the weekend, and there's a few other trick takers that we've been talking about on the show. This is another one that I think people should put on their radar. It's Yokai Septet, and yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's just interesting having the middle pin being the card that you want, but that middle pin, that 7, changes depending on the suit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, sort of like you said, wrinkle, because you just get so used to, and that's why I like Nyet, because you have that thing of, all right, so what's going to be the powerful, what's going to be the super trump or the the negative cards or whatever, and it just changes your strategy. Like, it's still the same thing, but it just changes your strategy a little bit. And like, another reason why I like not just naming other ones, but Skull King for the same reason, because it's it's that thing of, am I gonna play the mermaid now, or am I not? Like, and you're waiting. I don't think I could play trick-taking games on BGI. I think I would. I wouldn't. I don't know. It's like this weird vibe that you get, and it's not even tabletop. Yeah, but even like, the time you just looking, and this is going to sound really sort of like knobbish, but it's like you look at your cards and you look down and you look, and then depending on what you've played or what your opponent or teammate has played, you kind of get that sense of, right, yeah, I can see why that was a hard decision. So I think that's what you got left. And the more you play them, the more you pick up on that stuff too, unless you're socially inept like myself and you can't pick up on social cues. But like, that's, I'd be very interested to try this one in person, mind you, Dan.
Yes.
I don't think
it must say a lot to the game, because you're enjoying it so much, not even have played it in person. So I guess if you were to get a copy in your hands, it would probably raise that game a lot higher in your books as well.
I agree, Mark. I'd love to be able to get it to the table and play. In fact, I'm going to keep an eye out for it and just add it to see if I can add it to the collection. All right, we're back around to you again, Mike. Hit us with a couple of other goodies that you've been playing over the weekend. Or over the last week.
Another one I really enjoyed is a follow-up to a game that's an old favorite of mine. I was a big fan of Point Salad, if you're familiar with that one. And I just got in Point City. And Point City was fantastic. It was really good, a nice step up. And the best way to describe it is if Point Salad and Splendor had a baby.
Oh, stop it.
Okay.
Because it just, as soon as my friend was explaining the rules to me, we're playing Splendor, aren't we? Because, you sort of got, I like the way it starts. You got a grid of, I think, 4x4 cards. And the rule is, so have you guys all played Point Salad? The backs you got your resource on one side and the other side is like a rule for scoring. This one's a little bit different. So the part that's visible to you on the grid are the resource. So electricity or people or this or that, really purple, orange, blue, like your colors. But if on the other side are buildings, and the buildings are pretty much, if you can pay this amount, you get to keep the building in your tableau, and it might have like a point on it, point value, or it might have a resource on it, meaning it's an ongoing resource. So in the grid of 8x8 cards, if any row or column don't have a building, you can take a free action and flip one of them to see what's under it. So the game starts with all these resources, but as you start playing it, you start flipping all these cards and seeing a building on the other side. And you have to take two cards that are orthogonally adjacent to each other. So you could be like, well, I've got one energy in my hand that I took from a previous turn. That building needs 2 energy to give me a permanent gold coin and resource, and right next to it is another energy. So I'm going to take the energy next to it and that building, use that energy and my existing energy to pay for it, put it in my tableau. Now I have an ongoing gold coin thing, and you start, that's a Splendor part, because as soon as that card goes into your tableau, that gold coin resource on it is a permanent thing, that like a discount that you have. And you start building this little tableau. But if you get buildings that have, I don't know what it's called, it's got like a resource of like a little building in it. You can then take these tokens on the side that are scoring conditions. So for every pair of, let's just say, purple and orange cards you have, you get 3 points. So my friends, I was actually doing really well at the start. I was getting lots of good, lots of buildings. So they started working on getting the buildings and let them take the tokens away, so I couldn't grab them to score my buildings. So there was a bit of take that going on.
Nice.
But it was a nice step up from Point Salad. Point Salad I still love for kids because it sort of encourages them to do a lot of math, I think, which is really clever. I didn't get that same sort of vibe in this one. But like I said, if you like Splendor and you like Point Salad, this is a really good amalgamation of the two games. And it was really satisfying. Didn't play for very long. The colors were really pretty. Like, it looked really nice on the table. Played pretty quick as well. But that was another quick game that got played this weekend that I thought was really good, and that was Point City.
Beautiful. You just remind me, I haven't played Point Salad in ages. I'm going to have to get that back out again.
It's so good. So good. And same thing, I haven't played in a long time either. It just brought back that love. I'm like, I can see the similarities between the two, but now I can see these new things they've introduced to it that made it really good as well. So, it was awesome. I think Jonathan's been playing it as well. He was commenting it in our Discord and saying he really enjoyed it as well. But that's a great little game.
Yeah, it's interesting, like how it sounds like you're right, like a good amalgamation between the two games, and it would be easy just to sort of say, we'll just use the same type of art, the same type of graphic design, or we'll just make another game. But they have said, no, we're going to use the tableau, because in Point Salad, it's a 3x3, right? Like you go 3x3 and they're all fruits, and then you can turn it over by scoring it. So, yeah. I'm very keen to try this. I only found out about it, the other, felt like 3 weeks ago or something like that. So, I'd be definitely keen to try that one for sure.
It'll definitely go in my little game bag, I think, a few times to get a few plays out of it, because it was a lot of fun and a nice build up in the game. And that's the thing. It's that game that the deeper in you get, the more exciting it gets, because your engine's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you can get bigger things. And the fun part as well, I think there were 3 levels of cards. So you sort of have level 1, level 2, level 3 cards that you shuffle up and stack on top of each other. So as you progress through the deck, the cards become harder to obtain, but might give you better resources as well. So I thought that was a little fun progression in it. Instead of them being the same cards over and over again, it was a progression. And towards the end, when you get into the level 3 cards, they're a lot harder to get because they were demanding more resources. So you had to have had a good engine building up previously, or have a lot of cards in your hand that you're taking instead of buildings to be able to get them as well. So that sort of, the progression was really, really satisfying too. The other game I wanted to talk about, and I won't go too deep into it because Def recently sizzled it. I've been playing a bit of Race to the Raft. The follow-up
you as well.
Cats. Yeah. So I'm a really, really big Isle of Cats fan. I love Frank West's games. I've even got another little game in the same sort of world from him as well. But Race to the Raft is a really cool cooperative experience. I love that you can't communicate a whole lot in the game. It makes it really interesting, and it really takes away from anyone being able to quarterback and try to take over the game and try to tell you what to do. I think that's a really, really clever thing they included, because depending who you're playing with, a lot of cooperative games these days, I tend to not bring out cooperative games if I'm going to be playing with people I don't know, because I've been sucked into a lot of cooperative games where I haven't had fun because someone's taken over the whole game and try to demand everyone does certain things, and it sucks all the fun away. And if you don't do what they say, you feel like you're not a team player. And I don't know, I easily feel guilty in those kind of games. So if you get that feeling in cooperative games but do enjoy them, Race to the Raft is a fantastic game, because you're drawing a few cards. I have a bunch of squares on them in different colors, and you're working together to make these paths to get cats to the raft, but you can't communicate. You might get a communication token. I think Def mentioned the meow tokens, that you can meow in certain ways very aggressively to tell people you can't or can do something, or an actual talk token. But those 2 tokens are the only times you're allowed to interrupt anybody and give them a suggestion on what to do. If you don't have those tokens, or you've used them already, you just have to sit there and watch and try not to give too much expression and watch that person make a move that might potentially stuff up your move. You still can discuss strategy before you do anything, but once somebody's about to play a card, you can't give much information about what's on your cards. You can more so talk about how good they are. The main campaign book has 81 scenarios. We failed in the 4th tutorial. So in the 4th tutorial that introduced most of the rules, we already failed. So there's a lot of strategy working out how you're going to make things happen.
Was the tutorial how to lose? In which
apparently so. But we all know as well, any good cooperative game, you don't want it to be too easy. You want it to be a good challenge.
No, that's true.
But literally every time you place a tile to make a path for the cat, you have to draw a fire tile out of the bag and put that down somewhere. So it's a lot of balancing between making these paths, and the cats can only move in a straight line, and you have to burn a card for it. And then once you move the cat once on your turn, to move that same cat again, you have to burn 2 cards. So there's a lot of balancing between laying out these tiles to make the path, moving the cats enough to be able to make space to put the fire down without blocking the path for future cats. Like, it's a lot going on, and some scenarios you have to put certain cats in certain parts of the raft, or we were playing one scenario where the red cat had to be last into the raft, and it was probably going to be the easiest to make a path for it, but he has to be last entering.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different things happening, a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, and just a lot of challenges in that game.
So how close does it actually get when you finally you finish the game and you win? How close is it? Like, is the fire like really sort of nipping on the heels of these cats?
Yeah, I made a comment to Def. I said it's really funny how in Isla Cats at the end of every round the cats just disappear from the water, they're drowning, and then in this game the fire's closing in on him. I'm like, what's next? And he said, we're probably going to have to stone the cats next. Like, what does Frank West have against these cats? We're just killing them, or we're trying to.
He's a dog. He's just a dog person.
He's a dog person. It must be. But the fire is really on your heels, and the shapes, they're polyomino shapes, but they're really, some of them are really big, really awkward, weird shapes that aren't going to fit in anywhere normally. Like when I was playing with Renata, I was getting not grumpy at her, but I was like, what are you doing? She was putting down the fire so quickly. I'm like, take your time. Just take your time. We don't have that much room. Please just really consider where you put in the fire, because
think of the cats.
Think of the cats, man, and she was leaving all these little gaps that we weren't able to put any tiles into, and it was very, very stressful, because the fire is right on the heels. There were many times that I was playing a fire tile right along and around my cats. Like, if they weren't in that position, they'd be dead, like, it's really hard. Like I said, balancing, making a path and moving a bit so you can have that bit of extra space to tuck a fire tile into. Very stressful, but that fun kind of stress. And once again, games aren't too long, so you can knock 2 or 3 levels out in an hour potentially, and then put it away and play another game. But yeah, Race to the Raft has been a big hit, very pretty. The only frustrating thing is you can layer these cards on top of each other, and it's all a grid. So as you can imagine, as you're doing things on the board, all the cards shift a little bit, and there's lots happening on there. So it's a bit of work to try to keep everything straight and making sense. But that's hard to avoid in this kind of game. But a lot of fun. Race to the Raft.
Yeah, it sounded awesome when Def was explaining it the other day. Like a game that my family would just devolve into a huge argument.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, but I want the argument to be purely meows.
Yeah.
That's what will make it funny.
Yeah. When you told me that, I was like, because just imagining the aggressive, like the bell, what's the game with the bell?
Are you thinking of Magic Maze? The red
we did talk about the smacking the mallet.
Oh man, I hate that thing.
Before we get to our sizzles, Conor, is there anything else you've been playing you want to share?
There is one game I wanted to talk about quickly that I played with Harry and Def a couple of weeks ago, and that is a game that I would never have played, had never have considered playing this, and it's called Lucky Numbers. Okay, so
oh, how good!
Oh yeah, so you've played it, right? Okay,
yeah.
So if I get anything wrong, you can sort of back me up or correct me. So you've got this 4x4 grid of lily. Are they clovers or they're lily pads? There must be clovers, right? Because
I think they're clovers.
And it's like on a pond. Like, I don't know. Anyway, it's not important. And you start with the leading diagonal going sort of like west to east, north to south, sort of going filled in with numbers. And your aim is to fill in your grid with numbers. Now, the numbers go from 1 to 20, so 1 to 20. But the rule is you can't put down a number unless it is in between the number to its left and the number to its right. So think for a moment, if you can, in your mind's eye, you've got the leading diagonal. You're putting down your first clover. You can put it down next to your top one, and it's kind of like a free placement as long as it is higher than the one at the top. So your lowest number needs to be the one at the top of the top left of your board. And it becomes really, really tricky. Like you start off just putting things down, like, yeah, this is easy. I'm gonna be able to do this, rah, rah, rah. And then eventually you run out of moves, and you have to start cycling through and swapping your tokens for other tokens. But the issue is that those tokens then go into a central bank, because you can either draw blind off the top, or you can go to the central bank, and so what was happening is you were kind of like hanging on to these numbers, because I didn't want to give them to Def, because it's like the exact number he wanted. So the trick is to arrange it to give yourself the biggest possible gap for you to draw a number from. So I think I got to a point where I was able to, I won the second game, and it was because the number I needed was in between like 7 and like 16. So, you got 9 numbers you can possibly draw from, and I just had to get that. But it's really, really cool. So Harry was explaining it, how he, like during the dreaded time of COVID, he was doing some online board games with his family, and he wanted something like simple to play with, and he just sort of researched it and thought this might be good, and I'll play this, and ended up that's all they played the whole night. So he had a whole nother list of games, and he said it became like super, super spiteful and super, super intense. And like they started trash talking and be like, "Oh, what's that, Joe? You're garbage." Like, so I could just imagine it happening. And you actually get really tense, because you're like, "Oh my God, like if I don't draw what I need soon, Mike's just going to fill up the board, because he's got the run ready to go. He's got the run ready to go. Just has to get the right ones." And you're going, and like, oh my God. So, you need a 11 or something like that, and you draw a 6. So you throw the 6 in, and then someone's like, "Oh, that 6 might be helpful." And they take the 6, like, no, like why? Why is this happening to me? But yeah, it's really, really simple. I enjoyed it an awful lot. We played 2 games, because we had a night of just sort of playing shorter, sharper games as well. But that's Lucky Numbers. It's on VGA. And Dan, so what fun have you had with it?
I'm just having a look at my all-time games. Lucky Numbers is my third most played game. I played it 53 times.
That doesn't surprise me one bit, because
I love it.
So
you can smash a game out in like 15, 20 minutes. It's the BGA implementation is so good.
I'm looking at a photo. Do the colors of the tiles have any significance?
Yes. So they're the sets, right? So like each, and that's how you can start to kind of like work out who's got what on their board. And because you can have multiples of the same number in different positions, right? It's not, so, you might want to get as many 20s as you can, because that's going to give you a huge gap. But then that sort of, makes it a bit harder.
There's one set per player. So you play 4 players, there's 4 different kinds. So, there's at least, so if there's 3 20s out on the board, there's at least one more in there somewhere.
Okay.
And in that respect, it's good, because if there's other 3 players have 20 and you've got like a 17 in your bottom right corner, the 20 comes out, that you could probably put it in the middle and no one else is going to take it. Yeah. And you can take it later on when you need it, but they can't take another 20. Cool. Whereas any other number, you could potentially have multiples of that. You could have 2 10s or even 3 10s on your board, as long as everything going left to right is ascending, and everything top to bottom is ascending as well. There's actually a variation on BGA. I can't remember what it's called, but the variation is if you play 2 numbers that are the same on your board diagonally, because they can't be vertically or horizontally next to each other, because you can't have a 10 next to a 10, but diagonally you possibly could. If you put 2 numbers diagonally adjacent to each other that are the same, you get a second turn.
Oh, so
that's another sort of little spanner where you can use that to your advantage and have a second turn.
That's cool.
Or you can basically, if you've already got a 10 and you've got, say, an 11 on your board, you could take the 11 off, put it in the middle, put the 10 on. As long as they're diagonal, you get a second turn. You can then take that 11 back and use it again, so you can use it to your advantage. But that's a great one. So
the rainbow, that's
disappointed I didn't get an invite to that one, but that's all right.
Oh, it was I
would have wiped the floor with
you actually would have, because we were fumbling around that first game. You'd just be like, it would have been, so you kind of need like 60, what do you need? Like 14, no, good math, Connor, 12 other tokens. It would have been 12 turns for Dan, and he would have put them all in place.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's just and the random draw as well. Sometimes it can work out because you draw four tiles to start with, and you have to play them vertically, diagonally across your board. And if you get like something like your lowest tile is a 10, you have to put that 10 in the top left corner. So you know that's either going to completely screw you up, or you might get lucky and just keep drawing tiles, between 10 and 20. Eventually, you're probably going to have to take that 10 off and put a smaller number in just to give yourself a chance. It's a lot of fun.
So that's lucky numbers. I've got no idea who publishes it because I'd imagine it's probably not the most recent game.
Pretty old. I'm interested. I'd be interested to see if the actual physical copy is cardboard or whether they're actually like tiles. I don't know. I've never seen it actually physically in the flesh.
Looks like cardboard, I think.
Cardboard. It'd be a game that would look pretty nice if it was tiles.
Would be. I'd imagine those sort of like if you want a super deluxe one, like
they nest in like a double layered board, and
that'd be good. Awaken Realms.
I'm getting all tingly just thinking about that.
Awaken Realms does like the numbers. I'll back it.
Absolutely,
really good fun. So if you what's the max people you've played with, Dan?
4.
Okay. Yeah.
I've only ever played that one. I've only ever played that real time, I think. But BGA does tournaments for lucky numbers as well. So, yeah. Some great games. I think it's time we got into our sizzles. Guys, what do you reckon? Yes, I hear you say.
Eat it up.
Let's do it.
If you're looking for a new board game, you need to check out adventgames.com.au. They have a great range of games, including pre-orders and hot new games. Anything you could be looking for will be there at Advent. Dean provides excellent customer service that is second to none, and he's always keen to support the Australian board game community through events, game days, and even through sponsoring a podcast. So head over to adventgames.com.au today. That's adventgames.com.au.
I'm going to start because we were lucky enough to get a copy of Star Wars, the deck building game from our friends at Let's Play Games. And I played this with Jack, and geez, it's good. I'm trying to think whether we have actually played a couple of deck building games, because as I explained the rules to him and he played the Rebels, I played the Empire. It's strictly a 2-player game. And I was explaining that he has 10 cards, the starter cards, and I have 10 starter cards. And then you can get resources and get other cards as you play. But after we laid the first 5 cards out and I showed him what to do, and I said, now you put them over there and you draw 5 for my cards. He goes, oh, this is like the game with the mages. And I'm like, hey,
yeah.
But anyway, Star Wars, a deck building game, is a strictly 2-player game where one player plays the Rebels, one player plays the Empire, and the object of the game is to defeat 3 bases of the opposition. Now, you start off with for beginners, it comes with 10 different bases. It suggests just to use 5 to start with. And once you get a bit more experience, you can add the other 5 to your game as well. And you always start with the first one, which is has 8 health, if you like. It takes 8 damage to destroy the base. Once your base is destroyed, though, you can then dip into the other 4 and choose which one you want. And some of them, I think 3 of them have a health or a value of 16, and the other one is slightly less. It might be 14. But they also have an ability as well, which allows you almost like a catch-up mechanism. So if your base gets destroyed, this will allow you to, like one of them, for instance, will let all your fighters have an additional power, one additional attack value. Another one, I can't think of other ones because actually Jack beat me. Spoiler alert, he beat me after he destroyed all my bases. But what you're doing is on your turn is you're using all 5 cards that you've drawn, and you're earning resources, and then you're also using those resources to then purchase things from like a central market. They call it the Galaxy Track. And the Galaxy Track is based on a deck of, I don't know, there's maybe like 80 different cards in there. And you know that eventually they're going to be bringing out expansions and other stuff in there, because I mean there is Darth Vader and there's Luke and Leia and Han, but there's a couple of characters that are missing from the first trilogy. I don't think there's any characters in there from the last trilogy, so they're keeping a lot of characters up their sleeve. There's no Yoda at this stage. I don't remember seeing a Chewbacca, although we didn't get through the entire deck.
Come on,
Star Wars then.
Nah, you know they're going to pull out a few things. There's no Mandalorian just yet, but anyway, you lay them out in the central Galaxy Track, and anything that is either a Rebel or a Empire character, you tilt it so it faces whoever's playing the Empire and who's playing. So if Conor's playing the Rebels, and let's say layer comes out, along the track, we actually have it so it faces Conor, and it'll have a purchase. So he needs 8 resources to purchase it. But I can actually destroy it for 8 as well. And so at the bottom of the card, but it's the top facing me, it'll have what it takes to destroy that card from the track so that Conor can't purchase it. And there'll be a bonus for me if I do it. I might get 2 resources plus I can move the force, which I'll mention in a minute. So there's already a bit of toing and froing, trying to destroy stuff from the central galaxy track so that your opponent doesn't purchase those things. And then if they do manage to purchase it, it goes straight into their Discord. But of course, as soon as they use all they finish their turn and they run out of cards, you shuffle the discard and everything comes back. So it's just standard sort of deck builder where you're purchasing things to make your deck better. There's also other ways that you can sort of flush out and exile cards from your hand. So the 10 starters that you get, they only give you 1 resource, but after a while they do sort of they chock up your deck a little bit. So there's ways to actually flush them out and exile them. So then you can really sort of hone your deck into some really, really good cards, some that have higher attack powers or that have more resources at your disposal. On the galaxy track, there's also spaceships that are cruisers that you can use, and the cruisers, when they come into play, once they're finally in your deck, when they come into play, they go in front of your base and actually defend your base. The other person has to actually attack your cruisers first before they can attack your base. And then there's also some other, they're grey cards, so they're neither red nor blue, so they're up for anyone. And it's things like bounty hunters. So anyone can recruit a bounty hunter. Anyone can recruit like a big transport, which might give you a lot of resources on your turn, or it might actually be able to use it to defend your base. And there's also some pilots that either team can recruit, and the pilots will allow them to get other resources. You've also, so in your deck, you've got the things that will get you resources to buy more things. You've also got characters you can use to attack. You can attack other players. You can attack the cruiser. You can try and destroy the base, or you can do what they call a bounty hunt or a sabotage move, depending on, it's basically the same thing, and that's what you're doing to destroy stuff in the middle track so your opponent can't get it. On the side, you also have this meter of the force, and there are certain cards that you'll play where you might have 3 attack, but if the force is on your side, it'll be a attack with 4 or 5. There are certain cards you play to actually move the force along the track. So there's a neutral zone right in the middle, and then there's 4 spots on the Empire side, 4 spots on the Rebel side. If the force is all the way at the bottom of the track on your side, when you start your turn, you get a free resource. So it's worthwhile trying to keep it there as much as you can. It doesn't come into play a lot, but with the higher value cards like Luke and Darth Vader, for instance, their ability is a lot better if the force is on your side. And the force always starts with the rebels, but there are a lot of cards for the Empire to actually bring the force over to the dark side. So that's really cool.
That's cool. Yeah.
And there are a lot of little touches to this game that make it more thematic than just a standard deck building game with Star Wars painted on. Like for instance, like there's when you blow stuff up or when you sabotage or bounty hunt things from the center, it goes in the discard pile. But there's Jawas, and if you purchase a Jawa, the Jawa can actually salvage stuff out of the discard pile, cool. Like a Jawa would. So
that's great.
I got a little giggle out of that ability, and like I said, there's some of the higher characters will move the force backwards and forwards. But essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to just attack the other person's base. And once you've destroyed 3 of their bases, that's the end of the game. And it plays in about half an hour. Now, we were learning it together, so I was explaining things as we went. So it took us probably about 45, 50 minutes to play the first time. And the second time we bailed. We bailed early because we ran out of time and I was winning. So I was a bit disappointed that we had to. I think Jack knew that he was against the ropes. Because I had a couple cruisers like in front of my base, and he was really struggling. I just happened to buy them so that he would destroy them. But they go in my discard, and then sure enough, they just cycle back and I just put it back in front of my base again. But yeah, we had a lot of fun with this. Like I said, it's been gifted to us, so it'll be in the library. So it'll be coming along to all of our game days. So hopefully, people out there can enjoy it too. But if you're into a really quick deck building game, people say it's based on fantasy realms.
Realms.
I don't know. I'm not familiar with the original or what it's based on, but I think for an iteration that is based on an IP, I think it's great. And for something that's really quick and plays in half an hour, I think it's definitely one to check
I wanted
out.
to ask you if you'd play
Yeah.
Hero Realms or Star Realms, because I like Fantasy Realms, and I could hear some similarities, like having guards blocking them so they can't attack you and things is one of the things that I'm familiar
I think
with.
I played Hero Realms. I think you taught it to me.
I teach it to you? Okay, yeah. So I wanted to see what the similarities are, because I love a 2-player deck builder. I wasn't sure if I love Star Wars, so that sort of interested me a bit. But the little Force thing and the Jawas, that sounds like little things that perk my ears up a bit more.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to having a look at some of the other the bases as well, and seeing how. But the bases are like Hoth and Tatooine, and there's Yavin, and what's the Sky Cloud?
Oh my god, Coruscant.
Cloud, Coruscant's in there, and
Bespin.
Bespin is a cloud city. They're all there. The artwork, I mean, obviously, it's the IP, so the artwork is all just fantastic. And,
yes, that's awesome, because I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of the expanded universe of Star Wars too. Like, I've read a few of the books and stuff like that, and they're starting to reuse some of those characters. But I really like how it's like, it seems to be like you explained, Dan. The ones that are sort of in that galaxy track, the ones that are on the side, you can both get. Is that right? And then the ones, and so, but I guess like the attacking value or the defending value of that you need to destroy, if you're the rebel player, is facing you. But then if you're buying a card, it's face up. Like that's actually really, that's quite, and you can't half purchase or half destroy anything on the galaxy track either. So if Leia's out there, it costs you 8 resources. Mm-hmm. So if Leia comes out at the start of the game, you won't be able to buy Leia straight away because you don't have 8 resources. You've got to build up your deck to a point where you can have got more cards in your deck that will allow you to buy more resources to then spend to buy Leia. And that's the same for me. I can't attack her and kill her straight away. I need to build up my deck. Yeah. So I've got cards that will attack her. And the interesting thing about this as well is you need to completely flush your hand at the end of your turn. So any cards you haven't used, it's very rare that you'd have a card that you wouldn't use, but everything goes in the discard, and all the resources must go as well. Yep. So you don't have any leftover resources to build them up for the next turn. You start completely fresh, and then you draw 5 cards for your hand. And there'll be things that you can have, or the other player might have as well, to make you randomly lose a card from your hand before your next turn. So it's one of those things where you play your hand and you tilt them, so you're not exhausting them or you're not tapping them, but you tilt them to note that you've played them, and at the start, most of the cards will give you a resource or give you an attack or let you move the force. But later on, some of the higher power ones will actually have 2 or 3 different abilities on them. So you might have one that allows you to move the force twice and get you 2 resources and will attack twice as well. But I haven't heard anything about announcements, but everyone's expecting there to be expansions because, like I said, most of the major characters from Star Wars, from the original trilogy, are in there. But then there's also Caspian Andor is in there, and what's the character that I can't remember his name anyway? Brennick or from the Australian guy. Krennic from Noah.
But it's from.
Rogue One.
Yes, Rogue One. So he's in it as well. So they've cherry picked a couple of characters, and you just know that they're gonna bring out more. And even the box. It's quite a small box by comparison to other games, but there's a lot of room in there. Yeah. So it's only a matter of time before. Yeah.
They got my boy Lando Calrissian in there, so it's a win for me. Yeah, I might if not play it when next time we meet up with the library or before then. Absolutely. I might grab it because my nieces again were pretty Star Wars mad for a bit, and they sort of go through phases. So I think this is good. I quite like. I think the way forward with some of these deck builders is the thematic ties, because I think the aside from things like, I know, Mike, you love Clank, and then Aeons, Aeons and stuff like that. Like they've got that done, right? That they've sort of conquered the deck builder. Whereas I think there's the G.I. Joe deck builder, there's the Transformers deck builder, and there's Star Wars. I think if you're going to try and get a leg in the market using that, the deck building mechanism, you do need to have a pretty cool theme attached to it. Like, I think the Transformers one, it's pretty bare bones when it comes to deck building, but because it's got all my favorite Transformers in it, It's like, like I want to get Optimus Prime, I want to get Blast, I want to get Ultra Magnus, I want to have Starscream, Soundwave, like all those people. And this would be the same, you know. You want to be, you want to get, I don't know if anyone actually wants to get Grand Moff Tarkin, but it's like, yeah, I want Tarkin, I want Darth Vader. You know, do they have Boba? Is Boba Fett in there?
No. I don't think I saw Boba Fett. Like I said, we didn't get through the whole deck, but there's no Palpatine.
Yeah,
there's no you know, Ray, Finn, all those guys from the last 3 films. So yeah, you just know they're keeping it up their sleeve, and it will be one of those things where it's announced and they'll announce it with the key characters.
Yeah,
like, this one's got So, and you're just going to have to get it. So yes, that's my sizzle for this week. It is Star Wars: The Deck Building Game, and it is great.
Sounds great.
Does sound great.
Back to you, Mike. What's sizzling?
Sizzling for me is a game that's had a lot of buzz a little while ago, and I finally got my hands on it. I pre-ordered it with our good friends over at Advent Games. I got myself a copy of Earth. Have either of you had a chance to play this game yet?
No, but I'm very keen to hear about it.
It's
on
great.
BGA.
Yeah, I've played it every day since Thursday. I've played it at 2 players. I've played it at 4 players. It plays great at the different player counts. I've heard it compared a lot to things like Terraforming Mars and Ark Nova, which sort of raised my eyebrows at it because it didn't look like it. But I see what it is now. It uses that tag system where a lot of cards have certain tags or symbols on them that you will use in combination with other cards or to complete goals. And that's why people are making up that sort of comparison. But in all, it's a pretty simple game that the strategy is where it gets quite deep. It's got a huge deck of cards to draw from. And from what I can tell, I think they're all unique. But it's a tableau builder where you're building a 4x4 grid of cards. And they're all basically usually based on like different fauna you can find from different parts of the world or different kinds of terrain. And the game takes place where every round you're playing 1 of 4 actions, and each action is sort of colored differently. So one action is planting. And what happens is when you're the active player, you get to choose one of these 4 actions, and each action is sort of designated to a certain color. And if you choose this planting action, you get a stronger ability. You get to plant 2 cards into your 4x4 grid and pay the cost of them. And you get to draw 4 cards and keep 1. But everyone else simultaneously gets taken action as well, but it's not as good. They get to plant 1 card and they get to draw 1 card. And that sort of is a similar sort of theme with the rest of the actions, where the main player gets a stronger action, everyone gets a weaker action. But that's one of the great things about this game. It's all simultaneous. You're not sitting around waiting for people unless someone's taking a really long time to decide what they want to do. And what you're working towards, there's a main board on the table that has 4 goals. They're the fauna cards. There's like 4 different goals you're working towards for the fauna cards, and they'll have 2 shared environmental cards that change every game. Like there's a decent deck of all these cards that you sort of rotate them in, and your personal board has a certain goal in it as well. You've got certain asymmetric abilities you get to choose at the start of the game as well, and you're just sort of working towards these cards. And as you're planting cards and taking these actions, the planted cards make up the 4x4 grid. Each card has different actions on there that associate the same color as one of those actions that you're taking. And what I mean by that is if Conor says he's playing the red action, I go left to right, top to bottom on my board, and I find all the cards with red actions, and I get to activate them. So you might have a really, really strong red ability or multiple red abilities, and it makes Conor second think if he's going to take the red action because he knows he's going to give me a bunch of stuff. But you're doing things like you're like growing trees on your cards, where you're putting these little wooden tokens stacking up on them and making growth that are worth points. You're sprouting new leaves on cards, which get you points. It all works really geniusly. I think that's what people I think love about it. Like there's so much happening in this game, like doing those growths and sprouting on your cards are all worth points at the end of the game. But a lot of the cards will ask you to spend those things to do other actions in the game as well. It is creating an ecosystem, and it's a really interesting ecosystem because depending how you build it, completely different every time, working towards the different goals you have, just makes it a new puzzle you're sort of trying to work out every time you play. It's been super satisfying. It plays in about an hour because, like I said, it's a finite end. So it's a controlled end where as soon as one player builds the 4x4 grid, then the game round ends with the equal number of turns, and then you do your scoring. But yeah, it's smooth to teach. It is really interesting. You got event cards that can play anytime to do certain actions that are quite powerful, but the more powerful they are, the worth negative points at the end of the game. You got terrain cards you can play into your grid, which are like usually an ongoing ability or extra end of game scoring. Oh man, I can go on about the game for a long time. It's just been really satisfying, and it's very pretty. The cards have beautiful pictures of trees and little facts underneath. So when my mate Matt is taking 6 hours to take his turn, I can sit there and read all the interesting information under the cards and learn something new. It's really, really cool. And I can sometimes get burnt out by playing game over and over and over again. I am a kind of guy that plays one game once and it goes away for a while and on to the next new thing. But playing this game every day, I want more. Like, I really want more of it because there's so many combinations of things. There's so many different strategies you can go for. I want to see what the new fauna cards are so I know the new goals I can work towards. And yeah, it's been, man, Earth is such a cool game, and I definitely see where the buzz has been.
Yeah, I've played this several times online. I think when you said satisfying, it really is. You've got that spatial puzzle in your 4x4 grid where some of the cards, their actions are based on, or will give you bonuses if you have all cards in this column that have the mushroom icon on it, or everything in this row will get extra leaves if they have this particular climate or stuff like that. So you've really got to, it's not just a matter of, that's a really good card, I'm going to buy that. It's like, now where do I put it? To sort of maximize the reward for it. I really enjoyed that part of it. But also the thing you touched on as well is there's no doubt, it doesn't feel like there's any downtime. No. Because even when it's not your turn, you still get to do something.
And that's the best part, exactly. And once again, if someone does take a long time, like Matt, you get to sit there and just read all your cards and just look at how pretty the cards are.
Yeah.
The I take an action, but everyone takes that action reminds me of Carnegie, where it's like, I'm going to make sure that I can only take an action on my turn, even if it's not what I need to do right now, because I know that only I can take that action, so I get a benefit. So I'm the only one benefiting from that. So that sounds really, really intriguing. Have you played Ark Nova, Mike, or Dan?
Yeah, I played Ark Nova and Terraforming Mars, yes.
Yeah.
So, how similar is it? Because to me, aside from the tableau building, it does, and I never really got the comparisons between Terraforming Mars and Ark Nova. I get it's engine tableau building, but we've just talked about several games that have engine building.
It's the tags. I think it's a lot to do with the tags on the cards. Having those different iconography and trying to match things up, and then some things generate a certain resource as well. They're the similarities, but that's also where it ends. Like, the games don't feel the same to me at all.
Maybe it's
except
the size of
for
the tags as well.
The deck is huge.
Yeah, I mean, Ark Nova, the deck is enormous as well. So maybe that's what people think, this is because then that adds to the replayability, because you get, next time you play, you'll get cards that you didn't see the first time around. But
I get that every time I played so far. Yeah.
Are they similar to other cards though? Because I know with Ark Nova, and I don't mind that, because you're not digging through. And I think I talked about this before on one of the podcasts. But when every card's unique, as in it does a totally different thing from everything else, it makes it a bit difficult. But do they have similar powers? Like, do the mushrooms act all similar? Do the ferns act all similar?
I think so.
Yeah, right.
I haven't taken a lot of notice, but what does help with that sometimes is some of the goals you're working towards will have a percentage in it, in a small number, letting you know how many of the cards in the deck can contribute to that goal.
That's really good.
So even some of the starting goals, Renato was like, that looks really hard. I go, well, look, it says only 20% of the cards have this on there, but that lets you know that you're going to have to work for it and sort of dig between cards and really look for it, Like, I thought that was a clever thing, letting people know how likely it is to hit this goal. Really, really cool. But I think some cards do work quite similar. But with how different the cards are, it really made me. I was working towards like 5 different goals because I had my own personal goals I'd planted. I had some shared goals with Renata today, and trying to work out how to make these goals work with each other with certain cards was the real challenge there. And some I succeeded, some I didn't. But man, it's just a fun brain burning puzzle in that area. But only goes for an hour. And like I said, satisfying is the word. You feel really satisfied when you get this really good engine going, and the way you place the cards, because you have to play left to right, top to bottom, well, this card lets me put one card on my compost, and I'm going to put it on the top left, but the next card, I get to take a card out of my compost and trade it for 3 sprouts. And then this card, I can take 2 sprouts and trade them for 2 growths, and you can sort of get this really cool engine going that, felt so good.
It sounds cool. It's definitely, again, something I'd circled on my list to play because I do enjoy the tableau and the tags and all that stuff with Terraforming Mars, and I did enjoy the building the parks in Ark Nova. I just wasn't a big fan of the scoring. The whole race thing was like, get rid of it. But yeah, then this sounds really, really cool, and it looks $1 million, man. Like, it just looks so great, like so colorful, and like you said, you got the little tidbits on all the cards, so you can read it. Like, you're learning. You learn, and as a biology teacher, hey, that's all I want, Mike. I just want you to be a lifelong learner.
I'm learning, Conor. I'm learning.
All right, Teach. How about you teach us a little bit about our last sizzle for tonight?
I'm actually probably not going to teach you guys anything because you have both played it before, and that is not science. It's history. It's Akropolis. So this game is, how good is it? Like, seriously.
Awesome.
Oh,
a lot of fun.
It was so much fun. So I think I was talking to Def about it, and he goes, it's replaced Cascadia for him, for his sort of like abstract to go with, which is a big call because I know Cascadia's got some pretty big raps, especially in our community. But what you're doing is you're building the Akropolis, and the Akropolis is made out of hexes, but groups of 3 hexes that each of the hexes has generally a different building type on them. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got quarries, which are blank, and they come in handy later. You've got the houses, which are blue, and in the base game you score based on your largest amount of connected houses or contiguous houses. You've got the markets, which are yellow, and they just can't be touching another market. You've got the barracks or the watchtowers, which are red, and they need to be on the outside of your Akropolis. So they've got to be touching an edge. And the temples are the reverse. They've got to be all surrounded. And then finally you have the gardens, which there are no rules with the gardens, but the gardens are quite rare. Did I get that right, boys? Did I get them?
You got your spot on.
Did that from memory?
Yeah, I did that from memory. Yeah. So I have been playing this a lot because I've been playing it solo on BGA. But what you're doing is each turn there's a track. And eventually this track exhausts, and you're taking these groups of hexes and placing them on your board. Now, you're free to place them wherever you want. However, you need to be aware of what you are trying to score. And then you also get points for having the most amount of a particular type of building in your Akropolis as well. And because they're in the group of 3, you need to be careful of where you're arranging them. So, you need to make sure that if you don't want to accidentally, like I've done multiple times, expose a temple to the outside because you're focusing on something else. So you want to make sure that all your blue houses are linked together. Now, going from left to right on the track, each of the tiles that you take, so the group of 3 hexes, and you can rotate them around. You can't sort of change the order because they're like stuck together in a tile. It will cost you either 0, 1, 2, or 3 stone. And stone is quite limited at the beginning until, and this is where the game really, I was like, oh, this is the game, until you start building on top of your previously laid tiles. So it goes from kind of being like this, like, oh yeah, like I get it, I can place that there and I'll just be really sure. And then all of a sudden you can place stuff on top. So now it's like, oh my goodness, I thought I'd run out of spaces. I thought I'd hemmed in all of my houses, but no, I can now place something on top of a quarry. So the quarries are there for you to build on top of. They don't score, they don't do anything. But depending on, and when you place when you place it on top of the quarry, you get stone back. So you've effectively mined the quarry, and then so on and so forth. And that will let you buy cards earlier in the track, letting you take more advantageous actions, I suppose, if you want to think of it that way. But yeah, I really enjoyed sort of arranging it and then trying different strategies. I know the two games we played, Harry tried like getting up to like level 4 with his
oh wow,
yeah. But because he was doing that, he wasn't able to like actually make anything worth a damn, really. Like it was just like he was trying to
there's not enough tiles for you to go up and spread out at the same time, so he's sacrificing one for the other.
But at the same time, Conor, you haven't mentioned the Dragon Balls. I call them
Dragon Balls. Yeah, and I can see why. So arranging your Akropolis is all well and good, but you also need to have the scoring tiles for those particular buildings. So a red scoring tile, and each of the scoring tiles has 1, 2, or 3 stars on it, which is why Mike referred to them as Dragon Balls, because they look like the Dragon Balls from the great sort of late 90s to the early 2000s anime that we all grew up on. But you need to make sure you have them, and they're rare. Mm-hmm. So you only start off with your house one, right? And then, like, I've been playing against the bot on BGA. I've played with 2 other people. I can imagine the more people you play with, the more intense it gets trying to get these scoring ones.
Oh, yeah.
And because the hate drafting would 100% be real. It's
absolutely.
Because you go, I don't care. Like, I'm just going to place this on top and get stoned for it, like because there's no downside to taking one and not using it for scoring, except like you're kind of wasting a turn. But it might be good for you because it's like, well, I want to build up. This has 2 quarries next to it, and I don't really care about that scoring section, so that's a free building spot for me. So it's all that type of stuff. And if you get focused on one area, then that just means that someone else can build. So like the gardens, for example, they seem to me like really, really good buildings to have, at least have one scoring tile in your Akropolis, because it doesn't matter where you put the gardens. They will score for you, and you get scores based on the number of stars you have. So the more populous buildings have smaller star numbers on their scoring tiles. But yeah, once I was like, wait. You can build up. I was like, I mean, this is the jam, man. Straight away I was like, I got to buy this game and play with my family because they would adore it. And like the same thing, and I did it so many times playing with Harry and Def, in where I went from scoring like 50 points to 16 because I covered up a scoring tile, or I covered up like, I inadvertently like put 2 markets next to each other because I was so focused on, I'll make sure that that's there. It's like I didn't take into account anything else. But yeah, it's been talked about on the show a couple of times. I think Mike's talked about it and Def has too. So I won't belabor the point, only to say that this is such a great game. It really, really is. And it comes with like modular scoring as well. So there's different scoring for the different buildings. I haven't played with any of them because I've just been trying to beat the solo bot. But I'm really looking forward to playing it some more with more people.
Get onto those. Like, I have never, from day dot, never played with the basic rules.
Oh, really?
I've always thrown in those extra rules. I taught it down the other day, first time playing. I'm like, no, man, under the bus, all the extra rules, because it's not that hard. And I feel it adds, like, we're gamers, man. We know what we're doing. We play Euros. I've never once played the base game. Get those extra rules, man. They add such a good layer to it and so much more scoring opportunities, especially the parks, because if you build the gardens next to a lake, which is just a gap in the game, they score double the points, which is so fun, creating these gaps, because then you can't build over them and you got to be careful where you put them, and man, you're missing out. Trust me, get those extra rules happening.
I will. Yeah, for sure. I was just wrapping my head around trying to beat the bot on BGA, which he's kicking my backside. But I will definitely try it with a different scoring. Yeah, so that is Akropolis from who makes it? Sorry,
those guys.
Yep.
Gigamic.
There we go.
Yeah, them.
Gigamic, that's what we said.
Yeah, yep.
Great Sizzle, Star Wars deck building game, Earth and Akropolis. Oh, we're running a bit long tonight, but I'm just having fun just hearing you guys talk about all these games. I've already written down 3 of them. But without further ado, let's move on to recap last week's question of the pod. Now, last week's question of the pod was, what is the most intimidating game you have played? And we'd be here all night if I listed all the games that were that I was intimidated by. Suffice to say that I was thinking about it the other day, and because it would be very easy for me to say any Vital Lacerda game. However, I wasn't intimidated by Kanban, and I didn't feel like I was intimidated by Escape Plan. When I opened up Weather Machine, 100%, I was intimidated. I was intimidated by that. But the other ones were. So I think any game that, and I put it down to the fact that because Def taught me Kanban EV, but I watched a Paul Grogan play through a little explanation beforehand. And I think the same thing I did with Escape Plan. Any game that I'm coming to completely fresh intimidates me, even if it's a smaller game. But I have to wade through a rule book. Any game that I can at least familiarize myself with a little bit before I come to it, I think I find it less intimidating. And I don't know what that is. Maybe I'm just getting lazy, and just the idea of reading a rule book intimidates me more than anything.
Like it's just rule book fatigue. I think we do play a lot of games, and we've played a lot of different games, and it's just like, oh man, like either someone teach me this game or someone speak to me and like teach it to me via a video. So no, I'm well and truly entrenched in that camp.
Yeah. Have you got anything come to mind, Mike, that you find intimidating?
I don't want to admit it. There's a sizzle I never completed, and it's gone under the radar.
And
an oath has gone under the radar that I never completed. It's Carnival Zombie. It was from the episode I did with Link. It went under the radar, and I never had to own up to it.
It's funny. I actually while you guys were talking earlier, I just made a note. I just wrote down Lost Oaths. And what I want to do is I want to reach out to Draven, who's almost like a bit of admin behind the scenes for us. He keeps a running check of all the games we sizz and all the games that we own.
Secret keeper.
I reckon we should task him to actually dig out any oaths that we haven't, because I know of at least, dare I say, 2 that I haven't done either.
That was my one. The first edition, I've given up on it because there's a second edition, and I want to play that, because the first edition, the rules, they didn't translate it all properly from Italian, and so it just goes into Italian all of a sudden. There weren't many videos on it. The game played a bit weird, and it really, really interests me. But I think I tried setting it up and figure it out one day, and I couldn't do it. I'm like, nah, can't figure it out. I just sort of gave up. I'm like, it's just too hard trying to translate everything, and I think some of the even things that were translated were lost in translation, that weren't explained very well. And just because the game played a very different to what I'm used to, it sort of got too intimidating, and I gave up on it. So yeah, Carnival Zombie for me.
Well, you know what? We don't pose the questions of pod for ourselves. We don't hold ourselves accountable. We pose the questions of pod to our community. So, Conor, have you had a chance to check out our Discord and see what some of the people were saying over there?
I have. So I've got a couple here that I'll quickly read through. So this is from Manny. Oh man, burn cycle by a mile, which Mitch took massive offense to, by the way. Eclipse blew my mind back in the infancy of my time in the hobby, but I could make sense of it, even if it did take a while. It started to make sense and flow after some time. Burn cycle, I've played the tutorial twice and played a mission, and I still wouldn't be confident to teach it to someone. So, yeah, no, that's Burn Cycle for sure is a bit of a tricky one. And also, just on that, Damo says Burn Cycle as well, so much so that I sold it after a couple of plays. While I love complex games, that one was just more than complex. It was complex, fiddly, and nothing really felt intuitive. So that's fair enough. Shoitan says, back in the day, it was probably on Mars, but I think I was more intimidated leading up to John Company because it was so weirdly different from anything I had played before, and now I have anxiety in my wait for Voidfall. Learning that will be harder, teaching it will be harder, yeah, no doubt. And Mr. Abodi says, most intimidating game by far, Magic Realm. I put at least 10 hours into learning that game and still couldn't understand the combats well. Played it 3 times almost a decade ago now, likely lost all that I learned. This is the game I wish they could simplify somehow while retaining a bunch of its character. Yeah, you really need to, if you've learned those complex games, to play them again, like really recently. Like I was thinking of Barrage, where I went back and played it again after a while, and I was like, oh, I've totally forgot what I need to be doing. So, yep.
I'm playing Barrage right now on BGA and with Adrian and a few other guys, and I'm still muddling my way through trying to. How do I get my wheel to turn? I just can't work it out.
All my cockroaches are stuck. Yeah.
Mike, did you get a chance to check out Facebook?
I did. Our friend Liz Cole said Twilight Imperium for sure. I had heard so many different things about it, especially that it takes a minimum of 8 hours to play. Once we decided to play it over 2 Sundays, it had 2 great teachers. Dion and I found it far less daunting. After the first weekend, he even wanted to purchase a copy. That's a good result.
Cool.
Lee Hath, fun employed. Stand up and be funny in front of 8 strangers without saying anything that might offend people with unknown sensibilities. Yeah, no pressure. I made that mistake once about teaching that exact game at my game group to a bunch of people that didn't know each other, and it was really awkward, and I learned quickly that's not the kind of game to do that with. So I've been in that exact situation. Liam Stewart, Teotihuacan with all expansions. I'll admit a couple of things in the 1 hour teach went in one ear and out the other. At least I can pronounce the name. I hope I did too. Ingrid Wright said, Pipeline and Weather Machine are the 2 that still intimidate me. Walter Dre said, probably an incredibly obvious answer, but Mage Knight. I'd owned a copy of the game for a year, lying to myself that I'd headbutt my way through it in a solo game on the QT. But anytime I opened the box and flicked through the rules, I would start hyperventilating at all the counters and tickers, modifiers, and shadowy threats of math. I'd slam close the lid before it melted off my face, Ark of the Covenant style, and flee back into a less treacherous board gamey climbs. So, yeah, I get that one. Absolutely. Steve Fry said, Coffee Traders. First time we played it, we had no idea what was happening. Now it's a favorite. And Dana said, Barrage for sure. I've played Barrage a few times and still found I have no idea what I'm meant to be doing on my turn. My mind is a jumbled mess. Of course, I remember this feeling when I play it again, and then I'm clueless from the first turn. Why can't I get it?
It sounds like
Anna, you're not alone. You're not alone. Now, we've been posting the last few weeks. We've been posing the question of the pod on Twitter, and are we still calling it Twitter? Is it X now?
X now.
We've been putting on X and on Instagram. So from X, Tim Alvarez says, "I love this question." Thank you, Tim. My most intimidating game was actually my first in-person play of an 18xx game, but not because of the actual game. I went to a meetup specifically for 18xx, and I didn't know anyone there. Everyone there was awesome, and they made my experience memorable. Super. That's what we want from our community. Stu McLeod said, a distant plane, but only momentarily so. It was so different to anything else I'd played, and I worried I wouldn't get it. Watching part of a playthrough and a few dummy turns made all that evaporate, however. And Party Meeple said, almost certainly Advanced Squad Leader. Back in the 1990s, we had the original Squad Leader basic set, and we were doing okay with that. ASL came out, and we thought we'd upgrade, but it was too heavy for us, and I sold it on within a few weeks, and I nearly never sell games. That's saying something for Party Meeple. On Instagram, Board to Laughter, and you'll like this, Conor. Board to Laughter said, Kingdom Death Monster. Or renamed Village Spreadsheet Sim with nudity.
I like the image with nudity. I was like, I only keep playing that game to see the nudity. Let's face it.
Yeah, with nudity and fecal matter. From what you guys keep reporting on. And Andrew Keane Photography, that's a nice way to plug his business. Said Almoravid, which is subtitled Reconquista and Repost in Spain, 1085 to 1086. Now, I had to look this up on BGG. It actually came out last year. It's a 4.18 weighting on BGG.
Wow.
So
I think he wins.
I think he's excused to be intimidated by something like that.
And that weight was just pronouncing it.
Yes. Level of difficulty in pronouncing the name, 4.1.
We thought Teotihuacan was hard. That's like...
Well, you thought Maracaibo was hard.
Yeah, true. That's because I can't read. Episode 0 doesn't exist.
Thanks to everyone for your responses for last week's question of the pod. Now, this week's question of the pod, we had a quick chat beforehand, and given that I was going to be sizzling a game based on Star Wars, we thought we'd throw a nice gentle one out to the crowd, and we'd like you to describe your ideal game based on your favorite movie. So we want to know two things. First of all, we're going to learn what everyone's favorite movie is, and then we want you to try and spin that. And what if they could make a game out of your favorite movie? What kind of game would it be? Describe it to us. And you'll find that question on our Discord, on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just quickly around the grains, what are your guys' favorite movies?
Star Wars would have to be up there, I think.
Oh, there you go. Yours is done then.
Yeah. But I want Star Wars Arkham style. That's what I want. Building your character up, be a Jedi, be a smuggler, something. Oh my God, my bank account would be in the black, in the red. Black? Red. What's bad? Red, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. It'd be in the red.
That's all I know. I haven't seen a black bank account for a long time. Mike, what's your favorite movie?
I spoke of this once on another podcast. I'd love a Blues Brothers game to be made based on one of the car chases that was push your luck, like bag building, push your luck.
Yeah, that'd be sick.
Trying to get the police guys to finish upside down.
Exactly.
Or going through a shopping centre, going through a mall.
Is there like all quarters somewhere? Like hit something and explodes with quarters? That'd be good.
I think that's what has to happen, I think. I want that.
What about you, Dan?
One of my favorite movies, I'd love to see like a labyrinth game. But it would be some sort of labyrinth, but also based on the game Labyrinth with all the characters. Or Goonies, the two of my favorite shows from the. Like I know there is a Goonies, but it's more of an RPG style DM'd game. I'd like to see more of like a treasure mappy. Like I've got a thing with treasure maps and stuff, so that kind of thing. But it's not up to us; it's up to you guys. So, like I said, you'll find that question of the pod later this week on all of our socials, including our Discord and Facebook. And while we're talking about community, it's a good time to just do a special thanks to our Patreons. And this week, we'd like to specifically thank Ian O'Toole, Jason Stevens, Jean-Baptiste, and Jean Lowe. Thanks so much for your support. And everyone else, all of our other Patreons, thanks again for supporting us. And if you want to support this podcast, you can always go to patreon.com/Board Game BBQ. If you sign up to donate, you can get access to exclusive podcasts. There was a new podcast just dropped last week. It was
Myself and Jules.
Yourself and Jules. What did you chat about?
We chat about blinging up board games, what bling we like in board games, how we, make board games fancier, things like that.
Nice. So the exclusive podcast. We've also got some other events as well. Last month we did a trivia. I think end of this month, Jace is going to run another Jackbox games on the last Saturday night, and then there'll be another trivia the following month. So you can get all those just by being a Patreon. But you can always support the podcast without being a Patreon. There's plenty of ways. You can go to Apple Podcasts, leave a star rating and a review for us. Spotify's got a new star rating system as well. And anytime that you leave a review, it helps us with the algorithm. So anytime someone does a search for a board game podcast, hopefully ours gets to the cream rises to the top on their app. You can also get involved in the Board Game BBQ community by joining Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We've got a YouTube channel that you should subscribe to and check out latest episodes and also other fun stuff that we do for YouTube. And then, of course, there's our Discord community where there are always games and conversations going on, so you can get involved and support the show. Now, fellas, we had another Apple review come through during the week, a 5-star review. I'm going to talk about the meta behind this in a minute, but this is because it's starting to bug me. This is the review, 5 stars, and it's from one of our members who you will know as Sub-Zero Joe. And the review goes thus: guys, I have an announcement to make. My top game of all time has changed, and I need to set the record straight. It's Arkham Horror: The Living Card Game. Conor, you were right. I have seen the dark and succumbed to the madness. You come for the campaign story, which floors all other story games, but you stay for the deck construction, deep strategy, and awesome community. And because I'm feeling wild, I'm going to swear an oath on the spot right now. I, Dan Harris, swear, and this is twofold oath, to first play a game of Arkham Horror using a deck from our beloved Patreon member and Arkham guru, Sub-Zero Joe, no matter how janky or chaotic the deck will be. The second part of my oath will be hosting a game of Arkham Horror at a game day. There are great introduction level scenarios and to bring more people into the game. And at the risk of potentially follow-up, Upon failing any other non-related oaths, I will double down with this. There's also epic multiplayer scenarios where several groups of 4 can work together to a single cause, and I will host such an epic game on a game day. And to finish, I shall quote Lovecraft. Pringlui Mangwalamf Cthulhu Relea Wanganagel Fragen. I don't know what I've just summoned, but if I can't sleep later tonight, then
Your hair's on fire.
Okay.
There seems to be a portal opening up behind you there, Dan. I think that you're in a bit of strife.
So I guess I'm playing Arkham Horror, and I'm also teaching at the next Melbourne Game Day, which I'm fine with both of those things. But can I just say, look, hey, we got a 5-star review out of it, so that's great for the podcast. But can people stop issuing me challenges to do, please? This is not a let's shaft Dan as hard as we can.
Please do. We like it.
But anyway, thanks to Sub-Zero Joe for that 5-star review. And I worry for anyone who's going, let's just have a look at this sounds like an interesting podcast. Let's read some of the reviews. And they're going to get completely put off by this. Or they may tune in and be completely intrigued by the absolute madness that goes on around here.
I wonder who this Dan is and why he's doing so many challenges.
I think everyone's just trying to break me. All right, let's boot this baby home and move on to our last segment, which is Swear an Oath. Okay, it's time for Swear an Oath. And before we do, just to quickly remind everyone that PlayCon, we've been talking about a lot. PlayCon is the 12th to the 14th of July next year, 2024. But if you haven't already, mark it in your calendars. If you haven't signed up, make sure you head over to www.play-con.com. I think I buggered up the website last time we talked about it. Play-con.com, and you can sign up and get all the latest announcements as they hit. So far, we've announced that we'll be working. We're lucky enough to be working with Games Australia, Let's Play Games, Garfield Games are on board, Gameway Tables, Advent Games, Joey Games. We've got more announcements coming in the next few weeks and months. We've also announced a couple of weeks ago that we're lucky enough to have Ian O'Toole illustrating the artwork that we're going to be using for our PlayCon T-shirts. I think maybe posters as well. So that's something special. And all the proceeds that go from that artwork is going to Ian's charity of choice, which is the Aboriginal Arts Centre Hub of Western Australia. So that's fantastic that we can support them as well. So there'll be more announcements. To make sure you don't miss out on any of those, make sure you head over to play-con.com to be informed. Right. Oath time. Connor.
Yeah.
How did you go?
I did it. So my oath was to play Motor City, which was a great excuse to sort of get a roll and write out again. These are the loaded roll and writes from Motor City Games, so named after them. And they got another one coming out soon, or French Quarter, so that would be interesting. It was great. It was really, really good.
Was it the first time you played it?
First time I played it. Yeah, first time I played it. So very different. I felt very more removed from Three Sisters than Three Sisters was from Fleet. So you can still see it there, the DNA, but the track. It's almost like they changed the rondelle positions for those bonuses, but and then you've got the specific actions that you're going to take with the dice, as opposed to the 1 through 6 that you would have with Three Sisters. But yeah, look, I've spoken about this a few times. It is not a dig at the game, because it's a great way of having solo and having to adapt your the way that you play the game. But I really don't like having to scratch things off It just annoys me, and I understand that lots of people would like that because you've got to change, but the fact that it sort of hems me in. These Motor City game roll and writes, I will play to the cows come home with other people. I just don't really like playing them solo. That is 100% me being a weirdie. Not.
I think the saving grace with this is you get to choose which of the
You do have a choice.
You do get to scratch out. So you're limiting your options, but you're not completely screwing yourself over. You can still make it to the top of one of them.
That's actually a good point. And the other ones, it's like, well, am I really going to get to the end of the the cache or the
Yeah.
research track? Probably not. Like I may, but that's not it. Now, it's funny that you read that review from Subby Joe because they just announced a new Arkham expansion. So it's called the Feast of Hemlock. So the Feast of Hemlock, and it looks a bit like the movie Midsummer. So I don't know if you've seen that. So it's kind of got that weird vibe. Yeah. So it's a little bit removed. But I have not been the greatest Arkham acolyte over the last sort of 6 or 12 months. I haven't even played the Scarlet Keys expansion yet, which came with some really badass player cards too, like super cool. So I swear the next time I'm on the podcast, I will have started my Arkham Horror, the Scarlet Keys campaign. So I'll do you proud, Joe. You know, I know I've let you down a little bit, but he is the number one Arkham guru on
100%.
He's far surpassed me. He talks about how at the moment he hasn't played as much. Last game day, he hadn't played as much because he spends so much time theory crafting decks on Arkham DB. And I was like, oh bless you! Like it's just like the nice. It's so good that he just theory crafts. So yep, looking forward to that. Bust that open. It's still in shrink. I have to pick some investigators from that cycle to play with. But so successful and a new one being completed, I hope.
Yeah, well, obviously, my new oath is going to be Arkham Horror as well, because that was my oath that I volunteered. I've been forced into it, but I will actually abide by it. And Joe, I'll be in touch during the week to sort that out. And I'm probably going to have to cut my teeth a little bit. I haven't played anything for maybe almost a year, and that was last time one of my oaths was Dunwich Legacy, and I started working my way through that, which I really enjoyed. But so I had 2 oaths because I had to double down because I didn't originally fulfill Too Many Bones Unbreakable. And unfortunately, that still goes unfulfilled. Talking about intimidating games, I haven't got it back to the table yet. I've been busy with other things. I've been learning new games, including the second oath I had, which were the 3 Postmark games. That's the Postmark trilogy. I don't think they refer to it as a trilogy. I'm going to refer to it as a trilogy. So I learned and played Voyages, which came out 2 years ago, Aquamarine, which came out last year, and then Wayfarers, which came out this year. All 3 are roll and writes. If you're not familiar with them, they were Kickstarter games that came out, and you download it and the rules, and they've announced additional maps with. If you've backed it, you get those maps as well. I'll start with Voyages. Voyages is, and I think Jules has talked about this on the show before, Voyages is a great little game where you are a ship and you're sailing the seas and you're going around and you're collecting different items, and the items are related to tracks. They'll give you bonuses, but the neat thing is you've got a grid down the bottom which has numbers through 1 to 6, and they're various columns and rows, but it's not a perfect matrix. It's sort of a bit janky. And then you roll 3 dice, and the first dice determines which direction you sail, and all the grid on the ocean, they're all hexagons. So then there's 6 sides, so there's 6 different directions. The second dice you roll is the distance that you travel. And then the third dice, whatever the value was, is the one you don't use. That's what you use to cross off something on your grid, a number on your grid. And if you've on the bottom, on the bonuses, and if you complete a row or complete a column, you might earn a new sailor. You might get some cargo, and you can sell those cargoes. So it's cargo. If you go to an island, and then you'll get the bonus from the cargo. You can earn sailors. I played the first map when it has like a dread, so it's like this baddie, and if you can level up a couple of your sailors. If you level up 2 sailors, then you can defeat the dread, which is worth a significant amount of points at the end of the game. So you're kind of traveling around. I enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to playing the second map. The second map is it's called a Marauders map. It's got a different bonuses and things on it. But in terms of just the spatial puzzle, they've got a really cool little compass there. So if you're playing solo, you have to do the whole thing in 16 moves. So you've only got 16 moves to go around and collect as much as you can, and then you score. When you're playing with other people, I think there's a different time limit as to when you stop playing, and everyone uses the same dice. They just use it in different ways. So I enjoyed Voyages, but without bearing the lead, Aquamarine, the second game that I played, was my favorite of 3. So Aquamarine, you roll 2 dice, and this is a similar. Again, you're back in the ocean again, but you're going down, you're diving down, and the map itself it's just a grid, and the dice you roll, you roll 2 dice, and you get to choose which of the dice. Let's say you roll a 3 and a 5, and you're drawing these polyomino shapes, but you're not drawing sort of janky ones. They must be perfect squares or perfect oblongs. So if you roll a 4, you can actually draw a 2x2 grid, or if you roll a 6, you can draw a 2x3, or you can just draw just 6 squares in a row. And you're trying to go down, down, down into this map and collect things along the way. You're completely encapsulating shipwrecks. You're claiming coral of a particular color. So if you accidentally capture 2 different coral of 2 different shapes, it won't count, and you have to cross them both off. You're collecting schools of fish, and the more school of fish you encapsulate in the bigger box is actually worth exponentially more. So 1 is just worth 1, but 2 is worth 3, 3 is worth 6 or 7, and so on and so forth. There's certain points at the depth, though, that once you start going down, you need to cross off your air tank, and your air tank's only got 12 spots. Also, if you choose the higher of the 2 dice that you've rolled, the difference you have to start crossing off in your air tank as well. So there's a juxtaposition there. You can go little increments down, 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 or go larger ones, drawing bigger squares, going down further, but then you're using up oxygen as you go down. And you're allowed to go down 3 times from 3 different ships, and that is it. And again, that's got a timer around there that's got 24 different spots. After every move, you just cross off the timer. The other cool thing is the timer itself is it's split into day and night. So you get points for collecting cuttlefish at night, and you get points for collecting stingrays during the day. If you draw your box around a stingray, but it's at nighttime, it won't count. So there's a lot going on in this one. It's really, really cool. It's not just drawing lines from A to B and going where the dice. There are certain ways you can manipulate the dice rolls as well. You can add or subtract. If you collect some bubbles along the way, then it means you don't have to cross off you don't use up any of your oxygen that time, which is really, really helpful. I really, really enjoyed this one, Aquamarine. And then the last one, which is the Waypoints. It's cool, but you're not actually you're drawing lines. You're going from feature to feature around the national park, but you're doing it freehand. And anytime there's a grid, it's 3x6, almost like when you're looking at a map. Anytime you cross over into a new section, or anytime you cross over a contour, so essentially you're climbing up a mountain or down a mountain, that counts as 1 movement point. And so you roll the dice, and the roll around the outside of the map has all these different movement numbers that indicate how far you'll move, and also what time of what kind of the weather it is. And there's certain things where you can get a jacket later on, so that if it's only a 1 or a 2, it's usually because it's raining or it's snowing. But if you pick up a weather jacket, you can actually add 2 to that movement. If it's sunny, if it's sunny, but they're randomized around the outside. So just because you roll a 5 doesn't mean you get to move 5. You count 5 spaces along, and whatever that weather and that movement number is, that's how far you can go. And again, you're going from point of interest to point of interest, and you're collecting these things. So if you're marking them off on the bottom. So if you go to a rabbit, for instance, you mark the first rabbit. If you go to a second rabbit, then you will earn a jacket, which will allow you to move further when it's wet. You might collect a bird the first time. The second time you collect a bird, excuse me, you'll get a hang glider, which then means that if you're ever at the top of a mountain peak, you can actually just use the hang glider to go sail from one point to another and not have to count how many points there are. So you can move across you're counting, not counting contours, because you're basically just not really climbing down a mountain per se. There's a lot going on in this one. This is my second favorite of the 3. I think they're really messing with the idea, but it was just interesting to look at a company like Postmark, just like you were saying with Motor City as well, how they're riffing on this initial sort of mechanic, but just seeing what different things they can do with it. It's really, really interesting. And again, with all 3 of these games, the second maps and the third maps introduce things that are completely different. So they're really sort of throwing out some new ideas, and I hope they continue to make more of them. And shout out to I don't know who it was, but shout out to the person on Discord who was talking about print and plays a little while back. And I made a note, because they said to laminate them, but laminate them with a matte laminate pouch. Because when you have a matte laminate pouch, you can use grey lead, and then it just rubs off. It's brilliant.
Oh, that's cool.
Because you get less. Because when you laminate with that sort of glossy stuff, I tend to sort of get a bit heavy-handed, and I'll smudge I'll
Mhm.
smudge the text
for
and stuff
sure.
like
This
that.
one you get the wet erase markers. That's what I use, the wet erase markers.
But this one you can just use grey lead, and
Yeah,
it's
perfect.
brilliant. So I've got all my print and plays now laminated in these matte finishes. So I can't remember who it was, but thank you to whoever it was, whoever the print and play master was. So yeah, Postmark Trilogy done. Unbreakable to be continued. And my new oath is going to be to play Arkham Horror, which I'm actually looking forward to because it's been so long since I've played it. And yeah, I really should get back into it because it's still in my top 10 games. How'd you go with your oath?
Not fantastically.
Oh.
My oath was to play The Others by Simon. It's a 1v all dice and minis game. I put the word out to my local game group last week to see if anyone was going to be interested, and I didn't. The people that were attending that week didn't get too much bite on it, so it didn't happen. So I might have to organize a specific night for it, or just propose it again when other people are coming. So yeah, failed my oath of the others, but we do double down, and I'm going to double down with some more Simon. It's no secret that Zombicide is one of my favorite games. And I'm currently rewatching one of my favorite TV shows, which is The Boys. Crazy TV show, and I'm just rewatching it now and loving it. And what got me rewatching it is because I just got in a couple of weeks ago. I've been waiting a year for it. You can buy special packs for Zombicide to add on to them. So I've got things like Ninja Turtles packs. I've got Ghostbusters pack, and I just got the Boys pack, which, has Homelander as a big abomination and the other characters as good or bad guys. You can even play, I think, as or a companion of the dog in it. His name's Terra. He's a little British bulldog. He's got a little mini of his own. It's my birthday coming up next week, so I'm doing a couple of days of board gaming, so Zombicide will have to make an appearance, and I think I want to break out my new pack of The Boys to play in Zombicide, so that'll be my oath. So I, Michael Ferrugia, swear by the time I'm on the podcast next, I would have caught up with the others and have played The Boys character packs in the game of Zombicide.
Sounds great.
That sounds great.
I look forward to hearing all about that. Yeah, how good is The Boys?
So good.
Coming out soon as well. But
And a spin-off.
yes, it's hard. It's a hard one to recommend to people though, because it's like you got to try and work out whether they're going to get offended.
Don't watch it with your children, folks.
100%.
It's not kid friendly at all.
It's over for a Patreon episode, but yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Look, we've run long tonight, guys, but I could probably spend another half hour at least talking about games with you.
Same here.
Thanks to you guys for being on the show. Thanks to everyone for listening. Happy birthday, Mike, for next weekend.
Indeed.
Happy birthday to Sarah for this weekend as well.
Happy birthday,
Sarah was
Sarah.
supposed to be on tonight, but didn't realize it was her birthday, so she'll be on next week. But to everyone out there, thanks very much for listening, and until next time, play more games.
See ya.
Bye.
We good, Conor?
Yeah. Yep.
Sorry, I thought you were in the middle of something.
No.
Thought it was just passing wind.
Passing wind. What are you, 80? I passed wind. It's what the nurses ask you when you.
I should know. So I've got to jump in early these days, because otherwise it's just going to come back to the
Self-defense mechanism. I get it.
You do it first, then we can't get there.
the nurse. Yeah, it's like a puffer fish. Just go. I'll get in with the old joke first.
Or the spitting lizard.
I'll be the dribbling lizard.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Board Game BBQ Podcast. Thanks for joining us. This is episode 258, proudly brought to you by Advent Games. Did I say episode 258?
You did.
I think you did, and I looked really confused.
I'm just going to redo it.
Yeah.